Chris Holtmann is opening up the shot for an open practice to see next year's team. Our friend Adam Jardy of the Dispatch, who covers the basketball Buckeyes, joins us right now. Adam, if you were Joe Schmo on the street, Buckeye basketball fan, well, I guess in some ways maybe you are because I know you're covering them. But what would you be most interested? What are you most interested in kind of getting a peek at here in this open practice?
I want to look at the new guys. I want to get a feel for, maybe what does Jaden Leday look like? I mean, I've read a lot about him and I've written a lot about him, but I want to get some eyeball tests with him. I want to get a feel for how athletic he is and for what sort of role he might play. I want to see how Justin Arns shoots the ball. I want to see how Dwayne Washington fits. I want to see what Luther Muhammad looks like. I want to start putting some eyeballs on some of these guys that we've talked about and written about so much in the last year, and knowing that they're all going to play big roles this season. I want to start getting a feel for some of these guys.
Yeah, I think for this team to have a measure of success, they lost so much last year. They're going to need contributions from some of those freshmen, if not all of those freshmen, right, Adam?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, there's whether you want to look at trying to replace whatever they lose in the down in the post with Keita being gone and Jayshawn being gone. I mean, then you start looking at some of like a Jaden Leday and you wonder how significant a role he might play right off the bat. Then you start looking in the backcourt and replacing an Andrew Dockich and a Cam Williams, and you go, well, will that be Luther's job? Will that be Dwayne's job? I mean, how much does Keyshawn Woods do? There's so many questions at both, sort of at both ends of the offensive end of the court that, there's a lot I want to see tonight.
One thing that's interesting about the basketball program under Chris Holtmann, and this is not, I mean, you know how I feel, and I know how you feel about Thad Matta, just an unbelievable guy, did a phenomenal job. But Chris seems like, at least to this point, very much more open with the media, with the fans in terms of doing things like this. For example, we've had weekly visits during the summer with different players, and that's kind of new to us. And he's trying to do whatever he can, I guess, Chris Holtmann, to keep basketball in everybody's consciousness. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I think that in some of the interview things, I feel like that started out of a way to try to spin some positivity out of when they lost all those freshmen when the 4 guys transferred. They started doing the weekly interviews then to try to get the guys who were coming back to sort of preach the message that not all was falling apart. But, yeah, the fact that they're doing an open practice like this, I mean, Thad never had an open practice, almost ever. I mean, sometimes you'd see maybe they'd have something before maybe a football game.
Yep.
They might occasionally do that, but I mean, I even think I think this event tonight might sort of take the place of last year. They had the thing at the Shot where they had, if you were a season ticket holder, you could come in, you could meet Holtmann, you could tour the facilities. The building was wide open. That was a really cool thing, and I thought that was a nice touch, a nice way for them to start bringing some fans back in and reintroducing them to the guy in charge. And I do think that's, for all the things that they've needed to do on the court, and again, not to badmouth the things that happened before that, but there's been some PR rebuild since Chris Holtmann took over, and doing things like this, it helps. I mean, I don't know how many people they will have tonight, but the willingness and the openness to do things like this just shows that you're approachable, and it makes people want to come out and see your program.
Visiting with Adam Jardy, the Dispatch beat writer for Buckeye basketball. They have an open practice coming up tonight if you want to check them out before they head to Spain. Should also talk about the momentum for the program, Adam, from a recruiting standpoint. Now, they already had Alonzo Gaffney, but during the summer, the pickup of DJ Carton, you've now got 2 top 30 guys. And if you think about where the program was a year ago and where it is now, it really feels like he's got some things going, and I know he's not done trying to add more, but it's starting to shape up pretty well for Chris Holtmann here, isn't it?
Yeah, they're in a spot now where, I mean, they basically have one free roster spot for next year as it stands. I do think that maybe at the end of this year there will be some roster attrition. I think that it's just a reality in college basketball. So maybe you see this class ultimately becoming 4 players once they sign someone maybe in the late signing period. But right now, I mean, they're in a position of incredible strength where they have one spot left. They can be very selective about what they're looking for and who they want to fill that. So they have a list of, probably 6 or 7 guys that are all battling for that one spot. And when you have that sort of position where you're not trying to plug multiple holes, you can zero in on that one specific need, and you can really recruit to the strengths of that. I mean, that helps in so many different ways. And like you said, I mean, 2 top 30 recruits already committed for the class. I mean, when Alonzo Gaffney committed to Ohio State, that was the biggest, highest rated recruit that Chris Holtmann had ever had. And now DJ Carton is the highest rated recruit that Chris Holtmann has ever had. So to keep upping that mark here just in year 2, that bodes well for the future of recruiting here at Ohio State for Chris Holtmann, because clearly the message that they're sending and the style that they're presenting and the way that this program is starting to assert itself, I think that all tells you that people are buying into that, and that's just going to help you with bigger recruits down the road.
For fans that don't know, DJ Carton committed a couple weeks ago, and we talked about it at the time, but this is a point guard considered one of the best in the country who's in that 2019 class. And Adam, from a strategy standpoint in terms of recruiting strategy with Ohio State, how much can you put into words how much of a priority DJ Carton was and how big getting him is for this program, not just, for this year, but, if he's a guy that stays 2, 3, 4 years, obviously that sets you up for a long time.
Oh, absolutely. When you add a player like this, I mean, he's, like I said, a 5-star kid. He's, I don't know that he'll be around for 4 years. I mean, I don't know that he's a one and done type of player, but as you've gotten to know Chris Holtmann, you start to understand how much emphasis he places on the point guard position and how hard he can be on his point guards. And he needs to get that position right, and he knows that. And obviously C.J. Jackson is going to do a lot of good for them this year. Andrew Dockish did a lot of good for them last year, but that cupboard is fairly thin going forward. C.J. Walker next year will be the only real, truly tested point guard on the roster until DJ commits. And so now you start looking at it as you have a guy who's like I said, a 5-star kid, a kid that basically every school in America wanted, and he is coming to Ohio State. Like, that just tells you that the emphasis and the priority that they're putting on that position was recognized. And I do think that I think he will be a significant impact player. I mean, he's the type of kid that we could, right now, it's realistic to say that he could be a Big Ten Freshman of the Year next year. I mean, the ceiling is up there for a player like that. And so it's kind of hard to oversell what a commitment like that means for this program right now.
In terms of this team next year, before those guys get there, this trip to Spain, it seems to be timed perfectly. You can take these trips every 4 years, but for a team that has so many moving parts and lost a couple of stalwarts in the program like Keita Bates-Diop, Ken Williams, and Jayshawn Tate, and you're bringing in 4 new guys, and who's going to fit where, seems like a pretty nice advantage to have the trip this summer with a team like this, doesn't it, Adam? To get those extra practices and also just hanging around each other for, a couple extra weeks.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think off the top of my head, I think there's 9 players on this roster who are in their first or second year with the program.
Yeah.
So there's just so much maturation and acclimation that needs to happen where these guys, you've got to know, like, I mean, I assume even just down to the silly, like, well, what music do we play in the locker room after a game? Like, what do guys feel? What are the guys, how do they interact with each other? How do they feel about each other? Like, those are all very nebulous things to talk about. And it all helps when it comes to winning, but I think that you need those kinds of things if you want to build a culture and if you want, if you want this thing to keep moving forward. I do think that when you talk about the team as a whole going into the season, it's realistic to think that it won't live up to the standards that were set last year as far as a wins and losses standpoint. But that's not to say that you can't continue to build positive momentum forward. You play the way that that Chris Holtmann wants them to play. Continue to build that program the way they want to build it. A summer like this with so many new faces, to have these guys get more time around each other and to have them go take a trip like this, a visit like this. Like, I still think when I was a senior in high school, we took a trip to New York City. I mean, some of the ways that my friendships with people I didn't know very well really grew. Like, those types of experiences legitimately do help you get closer to people. And when you talk about a basketball team, I think that, that does a heck of a lot of good. And I don't know if it'll help from a straight wins and losses standpoint, but it'll certainly help with camaraderie, and I think that sort of stuff helps you when you're slogging through a Big Ten, a crazy Big Ten schedule in the middle of February and everybody's tired. That's when this stuff, I think, will help you.
In my years of covering Ohio State basketball, and Adam, I don't know how you feel, but probably if you had to ask me my favorite team that I covered, it was the 09-10 team, Evan Turner's breakout year. They were they had a camaraderie, and it splashed over into 2011, obviously, that team. But I remember that team that year, and Thad took them to Canada. They had
right.
Do you remember that? And they like camped out. They like roughed it up. And they came back and they talked about what that trip did for them, just from, did it help them win the Big Ten? I don't know. But it did bring them closer together. And I'm telling you, covering them, you could tell the bond. Yeah. They genuinely, and today, I mean, God, they're still playing in the TBT, and Evan Turner's buying them flip-flops. I mean, they developed something on that trip, and hopefully that happens for this group.
Yeah, and I think for that to take place, you have to have the right kind of guys in the program. You have to have the guys that buy in, the guys that are capable of building those relationships, that want to build those types of relationships. And I think that what we've seen from the early going here with Chris Holtmann is that those are the kinds of players they've targeted. Those are the kinds of players they've brought in. Like, these aren't selfish guys. These aren't guys that are just going to, go to Spain and, not want to do anything with their teammates. Like, these are guys that are going to want to go check out, they're having, a paella dinner at the beach. These are guys that are going to want to go do that together. Or they're going to go see, I think, Real Madrid's soccer stadium. They're doing this stuff together, and I think they want to do that together. And I think the want to, when it comes to things like that, is as important as anything else. You have to have the right guys in order for you to have that sort of buy-in. And I think that this team has that. Now, we'll see, because we don't know these freshmen as well as we know the guys who have been there, and we don't know some of these newcomers. But, I mean, based on what we've seen from Chris Holtmann and the players he's recruited so far, I think it's reasonable to expect that these guys will fit into that mold, and this can certainly help them as they get ready for the year.
Man, paella on the beach sounds pretty nice. How can we get in on this trip? You go to Michigan, Angelique is traveling with the team all the time. Man, you got to figure this out for us.
Yeah, as the dispatch, are they forking it over for you to go to Spain?
It was discussed heavily, but in the end, since they're doing all the practices here, we just decided that it wasn't. We wouldn't have got the bang for the buck.
Who do we need to call on your behalf? So we can get you to Spain.
I'll turn off air.
Okay, that's right. Hey, Adam, thanks so much. Appreciate you taking a few minutes and talking some hoops.
Always great to talk to you guys.